Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So we have a fresh week and of course, unfortunately, we get an absolutely horrendous start to this week with a down of a 5% and unfortunately closing our first closure since all the way back somewhere around pretty much almost a year ago, actually more than a year ago at this point, under 200. So that's not good. That's obviously not ideal. So we're pretty much sitting in the 500s now pre-split. So that's pretty low. And again, many times I talked about how every time we fell under these levels, we got sucked back up, and that's good. And the fact that we finally got a candle that closed well below all this obviously isn't ideal. Now, I personally don't think it's all over yet, but we are absolutely dancing on extremely thin ice here. Now, I'll talk about what I'm personally expecting and whatnot as we, of course, go throughout the video. Again, just as a thing, again, none of this is financial advice. Make your own decisions, do your own research, all that good stuff. But yeah, let's talk about it. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, right? The first and foremost, we got two absolute massive candles. Like I always say, Mondays and Fridays tend to rhyme. Friday, the market was green. Monday, the market is green. Friday, Tesla was red. Monday, Tesla is red. So I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow was some kind of flip where the market's red, Tesla's green. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But unfortunately, if Tesla still follows the market tomorrow on a red day, that's going to be just very disappointing. However, all that being said and done, let's talk about it. What does it mean? So we closed below 200. That's obviously ultimately a bearish sign. We made a lower low. We had a candle that closed well below 200. And it's just, there's just there is support, again, at these levels, like 195, 187, and then ultimately the main one being 150 all the way, down, which, you can argue that there's also support somewhere around these kind of like 180 levels as well, right? Potential support at like 166, but like there's a lot of room here to fall. As you can see, we just pretty much skyrocketed this level pretty aggressively. So in my opinion, if we ever lose something like 180, the fall all the way down to 150, or at least like maybe even like 167-ish, it could be painful. Let's just say that, right? Could definitely be painful. And again, I said this a long time ago, my ultimate price target is my worst case price target is 150, but my ultimate price target is still about 180 something, like, and I still wouldn't be shocked if we get there. I still don't think we'll get there just yet, but you never know, really. You never know, right? Sometimes with this market. But ultimately, the way I see it is bearish signs here, bearish closure, bearish candles, bearish, break up under 200, and we can sustain it on pretty decent volume as well. So there's a lot of, things that just aren't really all that good, right? We have, of course, the EMO, we're still substantially below that. The 50 and the 200 are so far above us, we can't even see it on the screen. And then the 5 and the 10 are also well below us. The red line on the Bollinger Band is something that we are still very tightly hugging. And, you can see it is starting to spread apart, though it is still ultimately overall still kind of tight. So I still don't think this is the big move yet, but, we'll see if this continues down or not. Now, that's like the overall bearish things. However, on the bullish side, right, some things that you can see that's maybe like a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. We are, of course, still around a support here that can bounce us pretty well, right? There's been many times where Tesla would do these kind of closures, whether it's to the upside or to the downside, where it would seem extremely bearish and then it would instantly flip the next day. That's happened several times before, and that honestly wouldn't surprise me here. I did buy shares today. I did sell a put today. But the thing that makes me still, not, I guess, panicking or whatever, like all that worried is, number one, because, this is not money I need anyways for, a foreseeable future, right? I can, worst case scenario, hold this. I'm still going to be selling puts and calls against it, so I'm still making money as I'm holding it. That's like a rent fee, essentially, is the way I look at it. But on top of everything else is the fact that the RSI, we are obviously making lowered lows here, right? As you can see, the daily, as this is kind of trending down. That was a horrible arrow. Let me redo that. As we're essentially trending downwards like this on the daily, on the same time frame from back over here when we started setting this low on the RSI, which is here. I'll zoom it up so it's easier to see. We are still making a trend upwards, right? So as you can see, oops, let me remove that. And let me make this a little bit bigger, right? So as you can see, as the stock is trending downwards, the RSI is trending upwards, which to me is still a really good sign. The point as to where, not necessarily I'll get worried, but at the point where I'm like, okay, this is just really bad now, is if as the stock continues going lower and we break this low on the RSI of like pretty much very high 24s, like 24.7 something, or 7.2-ish, let's say 7.5, whatever it is, right? Essentially, if the RSI at every point makes a lower low over this as the stock, in theory, let's say keeps falling, that's when things are looking, in my opinion, a lot less worse. But the fact that we still have this divergence playing out, the fact that we're making lower lows and our size still sitting at, still pretty low levels, but not lower than this, to me, on the daily especially, is a good sign, right? That's obviously doesn't mean that the bottom is absolutely here. We can still definitely fall to 195, maybe even as low as my ultimate price target in the 180s. That's still possible. But my ultimate goal is that if in theory we were to fall down to the 180s and we still don't make a lower low on the RSI, even though we're making a fairly substantial lower low on the stock, that to me tells me that the trend is still gonna flip, and it's still relatively close to being around the corner. Again, don't forget, because it's on the daily, that is very important to remember that that is a longer time horizon. It's not something like, if we were to look at the 15, 30 minute, even 1 hour, which can, dictate from a couple of days to like a week or something like that. The daily is a slightly more extended period of time frame, which also means it takes a bit longer for patterns like, for instance, the bullish divergence on the RSI while the stock is falling to play out, right? It is overall a slower resolve, essentially, or it takes longer for the pattern to resolve, but when it does, or if it does, I guess, if and when it does, it's a more meaningful trend change. So in this case, again, because we are making lower lows on the stock, but the RSI is making in theory, at least for now, higher lows. Once it does flip, right, once we do get a trend change, that means that that trend change should last also a longer time as well, right? That's just kind of what it means, just as an FYI if you're unfamiliar or whatever. So that to me I like. However, because of the actual closure itself, it's looking pretty bearish and it's not looking great. But because I personally wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow is a Tuesday. Again, like I said, Mondays and Fridays rhyme, and then usually Tuesdays is the opposite. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get some kind of green tomorrow. I'm really curious to see what that is, right? And I also have that 3-day rule, right? So if we get like a breakout or a breakdown, in this case, of course, it is a breakdown, I still have that 3-day rule where, to me, this doesn't mean too much until I see it have issues like fixing the mistake, if that makes sense in this case, right? So for instance, if we have issues coming back over 200 or even all the way at this 204 level, like if we can't within the next few days make our way back to at least above 200, ideally above 204, this to me is most likely a hard confirmation of a bearish breakdown, and we probably will be going down to the 180s or something like that, right? But if we can maybe tomorrow or the next day, being Wednesday, even as late as like Thursday, make a recovery back at least above 200, but ideally again above this maybe like 204-ish level, then this to me potentially screams that it was not only a false breakdown, but also a potential bear trap, right? So that's kind of what I am currently seeing at the very moment. Another way to look at it is we had false breakouts over here, for instance, when we had something like this, right? You can see like back when we were trading around these levels, you can see Tesla had, several rejection here, but it had this one massive green candle that broke right above it, right? And you can be like, before this line existed, of course, because this line only came into fruition after we had really this, true closure. However, you can easily have made the argument, oh, we have a bullish breakout. That's very, very good, right? And then, and it's an absolutely massive green candle with a lot of buying pressure, decent volume compared to the previous days. Pretty much exactly what we're seeing on this red candle, just flipped in the bullish sense, right? But, back when this happened, what we had the next day is we essentially just had a massive collapse, pretty much gave back all those gains, and it essentially created a bearish formation, and we just essentially, plummeted from there, right? So that's just an example of what I mean, where you can have these false breakouts or breakdowns. You just need a couple of days to see if it's confirmed. You need to see if it's false or not. So that's essentially what I'll be waiting for and seeing, right? It doesn't really change too much in my personal game plan. If we continue falling, I continue buying. If we just completely rocket from here, that's fine with me as well, right? Overall, ultimately, my overall game plan does not change. But again, like I said earlier, I did buy shares. I sold another put on my main account and on my smaller account. Like I said last week, I did buy at 210, then I bought at 205, and then I bought today at like 197, right? So if we fall even further, I will buy even further. It's really just that simple sometimes, at least for me. But again, that's just my decision. That's just my opinion. Do what you want to do with it. Make your own decisions as usual. None of it is financial advice, but that is essentially what I am seeing. So I still think there's hope. I'm actually surprisingly bullish here, as crazy as that might sound, mainly because I personally think this might be a false breakdown. But again, we need to see the next couple of days to really confirm. And I also believe that tomorrow should be a green day, because it's usually the flip, of course, of Mondays and Tuesdays, while the market might actually be red tomorrow. That's essentially what I'm seeing. Tesla might just start doing its own thing, as it usually likes to do. So let me know what you think about it down below, guys. But that is my current analysis. And yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Oh, also another thing to note is on the weekly, you can see as we're making lower lows, you can see we aren't really making lower lows on our RSI, right? So that's a good sign as well. Even the weekly is starting to show bullish divergences. That's also important to note, because this closure right here on the weekly put us at this level of about 37.11. We are currently at 37.67, not much higher, but the stock is, you know, a fair amount lower currently, at least currently on the weekly, right? 4%. Okay, it's not crazy, but you know, it is definitely lower, while the RSI is definitely starting to show some signs of a bullish divergence. I wouldn't put too much weight on this because this is essentially, you know, again, kind of dancing on thin ice. However, the monthly looks a lot worse, right? So that tells me that the trend downwards might not ultimately be done yet for the longer time frame. But you know, on the daily, it's showing that, you know, a potential, you know, actual true bounce might finally be on its way. So we'll see what happens, guys. I definitely want to see you tomorrow and Wednesday, but ultimately we'll see what happens with that. But that's essentially what I'm seeing, all the different angles and perspectives you can potentially look at and things and levels to watch out for. So yeah, let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.